What, in your opinion, are some of the biggest drivers that are causing those negative emotions, those negative feelings? What in life do you find is inhibiting people the most, especially with corporate clients that you work with?
Well, just remember that, that's a really, really big question.
Hmm.
And for most of us, it's just it's the way we've been programmed. You just think of from day one in our, even our, in our culture, in our religion, and the way we've been programmed to believe that we're only going to be valued if, right? We've been programmed to believe you're only valued if you produce. You're only valued if you make a certain amount of money. You're only going to be valued if you're married and have children. You're only going to be married if you're a certain race, color, creed, blah, 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 blah. So part of our cultural dynamic is such that our human way has been to be valued externally by what you do, what you produce, what you bring to the table, as opposed to who you truly are, which is essentially a spiritual being having a human experience. Okay. So you're here having a human experience and you're a human being, you're not a human doing. You do things. So the locus of control, which, I hope to help people with, is to understand that your value already exists. And it's because you're valued that you get to do things. So the big shift is I have to do something versus I get to do something. The minute we shift into I get to do something, we become empowered. Because the truth of the matter is we have very little control over what happens in the world. That's very true. I don't have
Hmm.
control over the weather. Some people think they do. I don't have control over what's going to happen in world economy or what's happening in the Middle East. I don't have control. That doesn't feel good. That turns on the physiological stress response, the fear response, which lowers neurotransmitters, increases inflammation and heart rate and all those other physiological changes, which shuts down my brain and I can go into my fight or flight thinking mode as opposed to my higher brain, intelligent, 50 something year old mode. That's what's just going to happen physiologically when I go drop into a negative emotion. That's just what happens. So my control is to shift out of my negative emotion so that I have access to more logical, positive, rational thinking, that I have access to solution finding versus problem focusing. So that's what I have access to because resources are available to us to manage adversity, whether within us or around us. But if we focus on being helpless, that life is happening to us rather than with us, then we'll fall into that victim mode, which affects the brain, which affects physiology, which then affects behaviors and affects how we approach things. And that can be a vicious cycle. So when we step back, reel it in and say, okay, I'm a co-creator, right? I could go out in the rain and enjoy it and jump in puddles, or I can stay inside or be pissed off. Either one's okay, but it's my choice. I'm a co-creator. Life isn't happening to me. It's happening with me. It's happening. And then how I deal with it is up to me. That's where the control is. And so when we reel it back in and we realize we have choices. And the other thing is you realize how differently your choices are made or behaviors follow depending on your emotional state. That's the big deal here, is that when we shift out of that negative emotional charge, how we do things, how we approach things, how we receive and perceive things changes entirely, which is then going to change the trajectory and an outcome.